Every time you step into an interview, chances are that your interviewer is going to ask you, can you please tell me a little bit about yourself as the first question, right? So why is it that they ask that question? That's what I'm going to cover with you in this video, because the reasons why they ask that question might not necessarily be what you might expect. The second thing I want to talk about is more importantly about how you should go about answering that question. If you haven't already seen the interview that I did with our member Rishi, you should go back and watch that interview, because that is in essence the very first question that Rishi gets asked, and he gives a flawless answer to that question. And I do have a plan to release a podcast episode where I'm going to be doing a detailed breakdown of his answer and explaining exactly why it is such a good answer. In this video, I'm going to cover some of those principles by talking about, first of all, why it is that your interviewers ask that question. Okay. Now, the reason that they ask it has a lot to do with you rather than it does with them, because the chances are that if you are being interviewed, that they already have a copy of your resume. Chances are that they've gone through your resume in a certain amount of detail, and they have chosen you based on your resume to be the person that they are going to spend time interviewing, right? So if they have that resume, then they already know everything about you. Why is it that they're asking you that question? Okay, two reasons. Number one is that the question that they ask you about telling yourself, talking about yourself, gives you the opportunity to get comfortable. Okay. As your interviewer, one of the major concerns that a lot of interviewers have is that they don't want to put you in an uncomfortable position where you are not going to be able to really give them a good, true reflection of your capabilities, okay? Despite what you might think about interviewers and the interviewing process, interviewers are usually always on your side, because interviewing for a new role isn't something that most interviewers are keen on doing. They're very keen on finding a person as quickly as possible. And if you are that person, your interviewer wants to increase your chances of being able to shine really well in the interview. And them asking you about yourself as the first question is the softball question, is the warm-up question that they give to you, because they want you to feel comfortable starting a conversation and having a conversation with them, right? If they were to dive in with a much tougher question, that might throw you off, make you a little bit nervous. And most people who get nervous tend to clam up a little bit, and their memory tends to not work very well, right? The interviewer is always making sure that you're in a relatively comfortable environment when you're having this conversation, because again, they want you to succeed. Despite what your beliefs might be, your interviewer really does want you to succeed, because they themselves want to stop the interviewing process and hire the right qualified candidate for that role. All right, so they have your resume, they ask you, please tell me a little bit about yourself. The first reason why they ask you that question is because they want to make sure that you are comfortable, you have a good warm-up question, and that you're capable of actually diving into a conversation or easing into a conversation with them, so that you can start elaborating a lot more deeply on the other questions that they're going to have for you, okay? Now, the second reason why they ask that question is because it's a bit of a test of your communication abilities, right? And as an analyst, this is especially important to you, because the way that you answer this question gives your interviewers a clear idea of how you're going to approach the customers that they're going to put you in front, right? The clients that they're going to put you in front of. And so if you start diving into the details of your resume without in a scattered manner, and you don't really know what to focus on, that to them is usually a pretty clear indication that if they were to put you in front of a customer and have you lead a requirements or a specification or any kind of workshop, it's an indicator to them that you may not necessarily perform very well in front of their customers, okay? That is the second reason why a lot of analysts especially get asked that question as part of the very first question that gets thrown at them in an interview. Now, how should you answer that question, right? If you're asked that question, again, if you have already watched the interview that I did with Rishi, you will already have one a good example, but I'll provide you with another good example right now based on my own resume. Okay, so when I'm in an interview situation, and most interview situation, I already know that that's going to be the first question. So I already know exactly what I'm going to say. And what I'm going to say is often as follows. Okay, so the interviewer asks, can you please tell me a little bit about yourself? My answer is probably about 3 to 4 sentences, starting with, absolutely. I've been a business analyst for 15 years now. The majority of my educational background is in business analysis, and throughout my resume, and you'll see that I have worked on a very, very wide variety of projects, including off-the-shelf projects, including custom-built projects, greenfield projects, brownfield projects, and data cleansing projects. I have a very wide amount of experience in the profession. I would be more than happy to talk about any of the experiences that you are curious about so that we can have a conversation around whether I'm a good fit for this position or not. That in itself right there is maybe 4 or 5 sentences. Now, notice what I did and what I did not do, okay? The first thing I did there, enthusiastically, I'm willing to talk to you about anything that you already know about, but let me give you a very quick recap. And in the recap, I say my educational background is in business analysis. To me, that is holds lower weight than my actual experience, so I don't elaborate on it very much, unless they ask me to. Usually they do not. What I do is I jump straight to the experience that I have on my resume, and I provide a very broad overview of all of the experience that I have. Okay, so you'll notice that one of the things I forgot to mention a lot of times is that if I'm interviewing with somebody in the public sector, I will specifically mention that I have some public sector experience. Or if I'm at an investment company, I'll say I have experience, including all of my experience. It also includes experience in investments, right? And so what I'm essentially doing with that type of a response is that I am providing them with a very broad overview of the types of projects I've executed. And I'm providing them now with an opportunity to choose what it is that they want me to elaborate on. Okay. It is an opportunity for me to say, we have a lot of things we can talk about. Let's open up that conversation so that I can give you the things that you're most interested in. And in the back of the mind of your interviewer, they will typically have a project in mind, or they have a certain type of position for you in mind. And naturally, what they're going to do is they're going to gravitate around the types of experience on your resume where you are going to be answering the questions for the position that they're looking for. So let's say, for example, you're a business analyst who's done a lot of product support work, right? You don't have a lot of project execution experience, but you have a lot of product support experience. What you could do is really focus on that. And if you're applying for a position that is for application support, you would normally say that, look, by my resume, you can see that I have X numbers of years in doing specifically application support across a wide range of different types of applications. I normally have a very good knack for being able to learn new applications and dive into the details quickly so I can start being able to resolve issues or be able to provide enhancements. You could do that type of a response to a question. And again, what that does is it does not lead your interviewer down any detailed paths. It gives them the control back to say, okay, well, thank you for that broad overview. We're very interested in really, normally what your interviewer will say is something along the lines of, well, what really caught my eye about your resume was about the specific project that you worked on where you implemented system X or you supported system Y. Can you talk to me a little bit more about what you did in that role and give us a better idea of what that role entailed? As soon as they do that, you're giving them the opportunity to focus the conversation on what they specifically want. That's when you can start elaborating on the details. And then the conversation starts from there to go into a lot of different directions. Okay. So again, going back to the original questions that we had, why are they asking that question? There are so many good reasons why There are so many good reasons why this is such a good first question, and there are so many good reasons why this is the question that always gets asked, right? This is not by accident. Interviewers are working hard to make you comfortable. They're testing your communication skills, and also they're testing to see whether you are good at giving them the opportunity to ask questions of you so that you can elaborate on them, right? You can have a very controlled conversation that very narrowly focuses on what they need from you. Okay, so I hope that this video has been useful. Again, I'm going to point you again to that interview that I did with Rishi, because I have my own way of answering that question. If you listen to the way that Rishi answered that question, you'll see that he hits these points to a T. And that's why his interviewing skills are so good. And that's why I'm always advocating for people to go back and watch that interview, because it is such a good example of how to conduct an interview. All right, so I'm going to leave this video here. If you have any follow-up questions, please let me know, and I'd be happy to dive in and do more talking about interviews and how to answer questions in interviews.